Let's bring in Michael Faulkender. He is Deputy Treasury Secretary. Michael, wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here. I just want to get your reaction to something that Rand Paul said, and it's been refuted by a lot of people from different angles in this story, including the Wall Street Journal editorial page. But what and we'll talk about that in a second. But what he said is next year the deficit will be bigger than this year as a result of this bill. To which you say what?
David, thanks for having me on. No, we're seeing an enormous amount of fiscal discipline being imposed in this bill. This is the largest spending reduction ever to come to the president's desk that is in this bill. We are finally reasserting that we do not need the government to be the size that it was during the last administration, the spending blowout that occurred during the pandemic that did not get brought back down. That is what this bill does. This is a down payment on spending discipline, and we are going to see deficits come down as a result of this. But more importantly, David, what this bill does is ensure that we get back to a path of growth. By
Yes.
simultaneously increasing the incentives for the American people to invest and to work and to save, and at the same time engaging in the president's deregulatory agenda, engaging in these negotiations of trade practices around the world, we are putting in place an economic agenda that will bring our deficits in line, that will provide growth, and we will see over time a return to fiscal sanity. And we're calling upon the House to follow the Senate as the Senate performed today, to put this bill on the president's desk by this Friday.
All right. Well, it's going to be a challenge. And again, let me just go over some of the negatives that a lot of people are focusing on before we get to the positives. And they're I think, more positives. But there are these carve-outs that just look kind of seedy. When you see a certain individual senator, Senator Murkowski, getting a carve-out for herself, delaying some of the Medicaid work requirements. But there's one in particular, and you're looking at it on the screen. This was a paragraph. It was what a lot of people say was backtracking on cutting the Green New Deal scam. A new paragraph was added. You see it redlined there by Alex Epstein, who's an expert in all these things. He read through it all. He calls it a solar wind lobbyist dream. And he spells out the problem with it. He said, Big Green has 12 months to initiate as many subsidized projects as it wants, using the insanely easy-to-meet construction threshold. All you need to do is commit 5% of expected project costs to buying resellable assets like solar panels. Once they declare construction, like in June 2026, they'll have 4 years to place it in service. And then some of the projects, wind projects, et cetera, get 10 years of subsidies. That looks pretty bad. Is that likely going to change when it goes back to the House?
David, we're looking for the House to pass the Senate bill. But again, let's address these tax credits that are in the Green New Deal. We are seeing $400 billion of repeal of Green New Deal tax credits that the Senate has agreed upon. This goes a far distance in implementing the president's agenda to return to an all-of-the-above energy strategy, rather than seeing the Congress tip the scales in favor of one source of energy over another. We are repealing all of these crazy subsidies that the Biden administration put in place and getting us back to an all-of-the-above energy approach in this country. So we are seeing that the projects that are already underway, they are going to be grandfathered in, but we are seeing an end brought to all of these green subsidies that do nothing other than enrich China and push us away from energy independence.
But you've got another month or so to set up a project to begin it. All you have to do to begin it is spend 5% on setting it up, and then you have 10 years of subsidies. I mean, that added on at the last minute by the Senate seems pretty crummy to me.
David, what we're looking to do is push us back to all sources of energy. So I understand that there is a desire to cut even further. As you saw with the Senate bill, we were able to get the 50 votes plus the vice president in order to get this past the Senate and back to the House.
Yeah.
We were looking for as much of a repeal of the Green New Deal as we could get, but I think that we should recognize that repealing $400 billion of these insane subsidies is a huge win for the president, a huge win for the American people to see us getting back to a much more rational energy strategy.
By the way, Chip Roy, who did vote for the bill going to the Senate, says it's a deal breaker now with that added paragraph. But let me move on to the good news, because the Trump administration customs, this is breaking news from Axios yesterday. Trump administration customs revenue has topped $100 billion, and that's in less than 6 months. It was over $100 billion. That means more than $200 billion a year in these customs revenue coming in. That's $2 trillion in 10 years. Has the CBO accounted for any of this extra money coming in as a result of the tariffs?
It really hasn't, David, and that's the thing is if you look at the president's full economic agenda, we are going to see deficits come down because, again, when you look at the spending reductions that are in this bill, the extension of pro-growth and enhancement of pro-growth incentives, if you look at the renegotiation of our international trading relationships and the tariff income that is coming in, we're going to see higher revenues, we're going to see reductions in spending, and that's why I come back to the question you opened me with, which is Senator Paul's suggestion that deficits are going to be higher. No, in fact, deficits are going to be lower because we are seeing higher revenues and we are going to see cuts in spending such that we are getting ourselves back to a path of fiscal discipline.
Michael, to that point, there was this Wall Street Journal editorial today, and they haven't always been applauding Trump and his economic policies, particularly on tariff, but they pour cold water on folks like Elon Musk, who has, of course, said some bad things about the CBO, who say that this is a fiscal blowout, that's what the bill is. Increasing the deficit by $3.3 trillion over 10 years, to which the Wall Street Journal says, and I'm quoting, the Senate bill will slow spending growth in Medicaid, food stamps, and student loans. It will also roll back subsidies that have become entitlements for the renewable energy industries, which we talked about. Yet Democrats oppose all of these changes that really would reduce the deficit in future years. There is much in the GOP bill that deserves criticism, but the $3.3 trillion deficit critique is phony, just like Beltway accounting. That's coming from the editorial board.
That's absolutely right, because as I said, this bill does more to decrease spending than any piece of legislation that's gone to the president's desk, because we are getting serious about the excessive spending. As the secretary and I both said in our confirmation hearings, David, we have a spending problem in Washington. We don't have a revenue problem. And this bill starts to get serious about the amount of spending that increased under the Biden administration when we are not in a recession, when we were not at war. The amount of spending that was going on was obscene. And this bill makes huge strides on that while we're simultaneously engaging in the deregulation, engaging in renegotiation of the trade policy. We are changing the course of our economy to get it to a sustainable path. And this bill is a critical part for the House to get on board with, because we are going to see the golden age that the president has talked about as a result of ensuring that we don't have a $4.5 trillion tax increase and that we implement the spending reductions that are taking place in this bill.
You know, something else that's positive that you didn't mention that's going in exactly the opposite way of the so-called experts is inflation. I mean, there's all these reports by all kinds of folks saying that inflation was going to, as a result of tariffs, is going to skyrocket again like it did under Biden. Hasn't happened, and yet Jay Powell is still refusing to bring rates down because he says there's inflation concerns. And he said it again today while he was over in Europe and Portugal. I'm going to quote him and get your reaction. We went on hold, talking about the Fed, when we saw the size of the tariffs. All inflation forecasts for the United States went up materially as a consequence. Well, I didn't see them go up. Did you?
David, I'm still to this day shocked that the economists over at the Fed refuse to admit that the tax and spending and deregulatory agenda that we had in the 2017 to 2019 timeframe that we are implementing again during the second term of the Trump administration generated incredible success. We had huge job gains, we had huge wage gains, we had great economic growth, and we had low inflation. And so what we're doing is going back to a proven strategy. If you create incentives for American people to invest in our nation by by putting capital to work, by staying in the labor force, by having workers and companies focus on their actual activities of providing goods and services to the American people rather than engaging in regulatory compliance, you can better serve the American people's needs without inflation.
Right,
and so
right.
as we implement this bill, as we get our trade deals underway, as we allow people and businesses to make their own decisions, we will, in a non-inflationary way, bring prosperity to the American people. We
very simple.
We did it before, and we're going to again.
One of the few things economists agree on, inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. If you have increased productivity, you have more goods, more productivity, it brings inflation down, doesn't raise it up, as these economists at the Fed say. It just gets me that they still get it wrong. Michael Faulkender, thank you very much. Great to see you. Best